So today, I want to start from one of the deepest and most meaningful problems in the study of the human mind. And see, cognitive psychology itself is a very recent field. This problem, however, has its roots far in the past of human science and human philosophical inquiry. Now, the question is, how can things like remembering, thinking, reasoning, falling in love, enjoying a piece of music, how can all this stuff inside your mental life, how can this be produced by a lump of meat, a lump of proteins, lipids, the action of molecules and chemicals? How can your mental life arise from the workings of something physical? The same things that allow you to move and breathe. Now this, in philosophical terms, is known as the mind-body problem. The question of how purely physical mechanisms that take place inside your body can give rise to the mental events inside your mind. Now, there are probably two polar extremities in terms of trying to answer this problem. On the one hand, one approach is known as dualism. Now, dualism is the idea that your mental activity, your subjective experience, they all go beyond the physicality of your body. There's something fundamentally different between the stuff of your body and the stuff of your mind. It is related to the idea of soul and spirit, not necessarily exclusively in the Judeo-Christian sense of the soul and spirit, but there is the idea that there's something else that is the source of your mental life, of your subjective experience. It's not purely physical, it's beyond, it's metaphysical. And I have to say, as I think I will show a few slides from now, this is a very commonly held view among regular people, among scientists, among philosophers. I think it's very pervasive in modern society as a view. Perhaps the best known version of dualism comes from the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes. Now, Descartes proposed that the mind and the body were made of ontologically different substances, two completely different types of stuff. There was the body stuff and the mind stuff, and they were completely different. See, Descartes thought that non-human animals were akin to beast machines. And he used this particular terminology because at the time, there was a flourishing and a strong development of hydraulic engineering. So systems where you could press something, and then through a hydraulic linkage, another mechanism would move, sort of were the origin of today's machines, of course, in a completely different way. And so at the time, it was possible already through hydraulics to create systems where you would press something, you would move something, and that would cause something else to react and to move. Importantly, every time you would press on the first object, the second one would always move in a very predictable way. It couldn't move in many different ways. Now, Descartes viewed non-human animals much the same way. He thought they had some very simple pattern of reflexive responses to the environment around them. That's why he called them beast machines. Descartes did, however, realize that humans, they had a certain creativity to them. They had a certain spontaneity and flexibility. Our behavior is not fixed. We can change our behavior in an infinity of ways. Somebody could pose you a question, and you can answer it in an infinity of ways. And see, Descartes' view in this and in language, this wonderful and this additional thing that humans had, creativity. So humans, according to Descartes, went beyond this pure input-output of machines. And so he thought that on the one hand, he thought that humans had this duality to them. On the one hand, we have a body, and the body obeys the laws of machines. It's a physical instantiation. On the other hand, there's something beyond the material properties of our body. So what he called this the soul and the mind, and he thought this was non-material. It does not follow the laws of nature. It does not follow the laws of the physical world. And he thought there was one specific spot in the human mind called the pineal gland, and that was the place where the immaterial soul, the immaterial mind, and the material body connect. Of course, he never quite explained how exactly an immaterial soul would cause changes in the material body, but this was the point of view of dualism. Now, I think dualism is extremely pervasive in our society. A lot of what we say, a lot of what we do is imbued with dualism. Let me just give you a couple examples. Hundreds of years BC, the Greek poet Homer, in the Odyssey, described the terrible fate of Ulysses' men. So they arrive on the island of Circe, and Circe transforms his companions into pigs. Actually, not quite. She did something much, much, much worse. She didn't turn them into pigs. She stuck their minds into the body of pigs. So, they had the head of a pig, they squealed like pigs, they had bristles, they had the body of a pig, but their minds, in Homer's words, their minds were as before, unchanged. So the story he tells is that they had a human mind inside the body of a pig, a terrible fate. And if you think of it at the beginning of the 1900s, perhaps one of the greatest stories of that epoch by Kafka, he starts a book by inviting us to believe that Mr. Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning with kind of he woke up from uneasy dreams, and he just is transformed in the body of a cockroach. His mind is still the same. He goes by his day in much the same way, but his body is completely different. And see, you or I have no problem conceiving of this. That's how dualistic our culture is. And this is not just examples from the past. We still do this in our arts in particular. We do this all the time. Look, we have no problem believing that a 13-year-old can go to sleep and wake up in the body of Jennifer Gardner, but still with the mind of the 13-year-old. Everybody loved the movie of a child expressing a wish and waking up in the adult body of Tom Hanks. And this happens over and over again. We have no problem imagining the mind of Lindsay Lohan suddenly being inside the body of Jamie Lee Curtis, or the contrary. We have no problem with the idea that some other thing could somehow take hold of our body and replace our mind and replace our subjectivity inside our body. I'm not saying that any of this is real. What I'm saying is that we have no problem with this. Nobody leaves the movie theater in any of these movies and goes like, I'm confused. How's this possible? We all understand exactly the premise. That is how deeply dualistic our culture is. We have no problem dissociating our body from our subjectivity. And thanks to that, it's easy to imagine that my subjectivity could enter somebody else's body, and somebody else's subjectivity could somehow be put in command of my body. And this goes even further. We use this in language all the time. There's one example that I love, and I wrote it in your textbook. Think of the expression, my brain. If I say, oh, today my brain hurts, who's am I referring to? You can only understand this sentence if you think like a dualist. If you think that there's a subjectivity, it's separate from your body, and that subjectivity owns a piece of body, which is called the brain. If you think that the brain and you are the same thing, then saying my brain makes no sense, because who does my refer to?